Let's bring in our panel. We have House members Peter Welch, Democrat from Vermont. We have Peter Roxham, Republican from Illinois, and he is House Chief Deputy Whip. Also with us, Mort Zuckerman, Chairman and Editor-in-Chief of the U.S. News and World Report, and Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, Republican from Texas. Before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, earlier I spoke with Republican presidential candidate Tim Pawlenty. We're going to air the entire interview at the half hour. But here's what Governor Pawlenty had to say about raising the debt ceiling. Please take a listen.
I've been arguing don't do it, but if you do have to do it, when you have to do it, get something good for it.
All right. On the other hand, Jamie Dimon, one of the biggest names on Wall Street, fears the worst case scenario may be upon us. Here's what he said.
No one can possibly say, in my opinion, who is semi-rational, could possibly say that there's no chance of a catastrophic outcome. And therefore, why would you take that risk?
All right, let's get reaction from our panel. I want to start with Senator Hutchison. Why would we take that risk, Senator Hutchison? You heard Jamie Dimon. He's America's leading banker. Why should we take that risk?
Because we need to send a message to the global community that we are going to get our house in order. If we just raise the debt ceiling and don't get some kind of reform that shows that it's not going to be the same for the next 10 years, then I think that would send a terrible signal to the markets.
But Congressman Peter Welch, welcome back, by the way. There are no real lasting reforms. In fact, they're still quibbling, I am told by Republican sources, they're still quibbling about budget cuts for the coming year, 2012, and there are no enforcement mechanisms. So where do you stand on this potential deal?
Well, I don't know what the deal is, but what I know is if we do need a deal, and we need a deal where we recognize that the Democrats got to acknowledge we've got to cut some spending. The Republicans, in my view, got to acknowledge we need some revenues. We've got to have a balanced approach. I'm with Jamie Dimon. We cannot risk defaulting on our debts. America pays its bills. If we send a signal, we lose our AAA gold-plated credit rating. 1% increase in the debt ceiling interest rates means that we pay $160 billion more each year. Pelosi gets hurt by that. Mr. Cantor gets hurt by that. America gets hurt by that. We can't do it.
Congressman Roxham, welcome. You know, Senator McConnell may have a better way. He would give authority to the president for a 3-part debt ceiling increase. If Congress wants to vote it down by 2/3, they can. Nobody reckons they will. Is that the way out for you Republicans? Is that the way out for the country?
No, I don't think that's the way out. I think what we've got to deal with is deal with this directly, and that's sort of abrogating a responsibility, in my view, and just giving the authority to the executive branch. Look, the president has laid out a pathway that, in some sense, creates a false choice. He's saying either raise taxes or default, and there's clearly a better way forward. I go back to what he said in 2009 when he was asked in Elkhart, Indiana, if you raise taxes in a recession, and the president of the United States at that point was eloquent and poignant and said you don't do that for the very reasons that you and I know why you shouldn't. So the question is, why not move forward on these cuts that have been identified in the Biden talks, use that as a base, and move forward. But there has to be a different trajectory to follow up on what Senator Hutchison said. There's got to be a different direction coming out of this.
There's got to be a lot of things, but so far nothing's on the table. The votes aren't there. I go to Mort Zuckerman. Mort, you know that Moody's has downgraded us. I'm sorry, we're on the downgrade watch. And Mort, I think you also know that even on a cash flow basis, if we pay the interest on the debt in August, we're going to fail to meet almost 50% of all our obligations. We're going to talk about that in some detail later in the show. So they're going to downgrade us. We're going to go from AAA to AA. The dollar's going to get slammed, and economic consequences could be large, Mort. Do you agree with all these political leaders we have on the show that we should keep quarreling, Mort Zuckerman?
I'm totally dismayed with all of our political leaders. I don't apply the phrase political leaders to this group of people who haven't been able to get an agreement on something as important as this for weeks and weeks and weeks, to the embarrassment of this country around the world and especially at home. I think these people are, I mean, I think everybody in the country is disgusted with the way this is going. Let me just say, it starts with the president, okay? Because he had the Simpsons-Bowles Commission to get the deficits under control. He said he would stand by them. They're still waiting for him to stand by. When Congressman Ryan put forward his plan, all he did was attack them politically. And again, a few weeks ago, he made a political attack. Well, you can't do that If you're going to demagogue this issue and attack the other side, you harden the both sides and make it more difficult. So I start off with that, and the congressmen haven't been much better. The whole thing is a disgrace. We cannot allow this country to go into default. It is a disgrace that we cannot do any better than we have done.
I agree with Mort on this. You know, Ronald Reagan was the iconic figure for the Republican Party, and a lot of Democrats, Reagan Democrats, liked him. He never would think of defaulting on the debt, and he did not link debt ceiling increases with any of his policies, and he was a tough negotiator. So we have got to pay our bills. It's as simple as that.
Well, look, in the past, debt ceiling increases have been
someone to deal with. You've got to have a negotiation that's two-sided, and that's why we're pressing so hard.
Right. The Democrats have not been helpful at all, okay?
All right.
The Democrats are playing game with this, and so as are the Republicans. This is a ridiculous position for this country to be in. This is a deal that can be made. It can only be made if both parties agree, so that you have both parties sharing the blame, if you want to call it, or sharing the credit.
Look, when it comes down to it, President Obama
with it.
has laid out a plan that says you've got to either accept my tax increases or the country is going to default. That's an absurd.
Get rid of the ethanol tax credit.
Let me go back to President Obama's own argument back in Elkhart, Indiana, when he made it very clear, don't raise taxes.
But let me
and
go
this
back
whole notion that we can tax our way out of this is an absurdity.
All right, but Senator Hutchison, I want to ask you, there's a way out of this that will not require tax increases, and that is Senator McConnell's argument. Let the debt ceiling go up in 3 different pieces in the next 18 months. You all can vote on it. You can vote aye or nay, whatever you want, but there'll be no taxes, and the debt ceiling will go up, and Mort Zuckerman will be happy. Senator Hutchison, I ask you, is that the way out for the country, for the Republicans, and for that matter, the Democrats as well?
If we couple that with a pledge by at least 41 Republicans that we will not vote for any appropriations bills that go above a cap that will keep the spending down, those two things together are definitely a way out, because that means President Obama has to ask for those increases in the debt ceiling, and it will not be something that we will vote for, but he will get it. But we will agree that we are not going to support appropriations bills that don't cut back on spending. Those two things together can be.
The McConnell plan. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think the McConnell plan will have something attached to it that will have a cap on spending that we can enforce in the Senate.
Well, I don't know that it will. And I want to ask Peter Roskam. Peter, there's not going to be a balanced budget amendment in this deal, if there is a deal, and there isn't one specified in Senator McConnell's deal. There aren't going to be clear spending caps. I mean, to some extent, if you listen to what Mort Zuckerman is saying and the catastrophic consequences, look, I'm a budget cutter. I wish it were different, but we all have to move on here, it seems to me. You all have made your points. Would the House Republicans go along with the Senator McConnell compromise that allows the debt ceiling to go up? You can vote against it if you care to, but it'll take a 2/3 vote,
so
and more than likely we'll get it done.
What does that accomplish when push comes to shove?
We'll avoid disaster. We'll avoid a catastrophe.
No, the debt ceiling goes up. Politicians protect themselves on roll calls, and there's no accountability whatsoever. What the public is looking for is a change of trajectory in Washington, D.C., and they're not seeing it through the White House, and they're not seeing it through those types of plans.
You're absolutely right. For us to stiff our creditors.
The trouble is it's not going to happen, and the trouble with that is we may lose our debt rating, we may lose the value of the dollar, we may suffer economic consequences.
Larry, if I could jump in here, there's one other factor here that I'm very hopeful about, and that is the Gang of Six in the Senate. The cuts that they are talking about are very real, and I think that also has a chance. If we had that group of cuts that include entitlement reforms, that include tax reforms, revenues or tax reforms. I mean, you get revenue the old-fashioned way by building the economy, having people work and pay taxes. That's how you get the revenue up.
But that's not what the White House is talking about. The White House wants to raise the rate.
because you're taxing them so much.
But Peter,
Americans know the obvious. obvious that if you've got a big problem getting from here to there, you're going to have to do it in a balanced way. You're going to have to do some cuts. Democrats.
Why don't you wait around, Peter?
Congress reminds me of the Popeye cartoon where he says, you know, I'll have my hamburger today, I'll pay it next Wednesday. At some point, you've got to have some kind of fiscal discipline. It is an outrage what has been really foisted upon the country by the spendthrift qualities and the unwillingness to do what every American knows. When you're in debt, you start cutting up your credit cards. It is ridiculous that we are continuing to add to that. Everybody understands it. It's up to you people who are the leaders to do something about it. But it was ridiculous that we put Iraq on the credit card. We put Afghanistan on the credit card. We put the Bush tax cuts on the credit card.
All right, I can't. All right, Mort Zuckerman's on a roll tonight. House members Peter Welch and Peter Roskam, thank you very much. As always, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison and Mort Zuckerman in very rare form. Now, folks,